Welcome back to the deep dive. So glad you could join us.
Yes, welcome. Today we're digging into a source you provided, James Allen's The Way of Peace.
Right, it offers a really specific viewpoint on finding that inner peace,
hmm
self-mastery, spiritual growth, all that.
It really does. And some of the ideas, they seem simple at first glance, don't they?
Deceptively simple, yeah.
But Allen argues they have these, well, profound implications for pretty much everything.
Absolutely. And that's our mission today, right?
Yeah.
Not just to summarize, but to really pull out the core insights. What's causing suffering, according to him, and crucially, what's the key to unlocking real peace?
And the central theme, you really see it woven throughout the whole text, is that the path isn't about changing your circumstances outside.
No external fixes.
Exactly. It's all an internal journey. It means confronting and ultimately overcoming what he just keeps calling the self.
Okay, let's unpack that. He kicks things off with meditation,
Right.
but not just, relaxing meditation.
No, he frames it as a powerful spiritual practice.
So what does he mean by that? Spiritual meditation.
Well, according to the book, it's about intense focus, dwelling deeply on an idea or a theme, really trying to understand it completely.
Okay, so less reflection, more deep, directed thinking.
Right. Aiming for the absolute core of something.
And the really powerful idea he puts forward is that whatever you constantly focus on, whatever you meditate on,
You grow into its likeness.
Yes.
It's like your mind is this fertile ground.
and thoughts are seeds.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He puts it bluntly.
Hmm.
Dwell on selfish stuff, you become selfish. Focus on purity, unselfishness. You grow towards that. He presents it almost like a law of nature.
So it's definitely not just spacing out or daydreaming. How does he separate this spiritual practice from that?
He calls it searching and uncompromising thought. You're not just looking to confirm what you already think.
No confirmation bias allowed.
Right, you're genuinely seeking simple truth, even if it's uncomfortable. It means putting your own ego, yourself, aside for a moment to actually look for truth.
He gets practical, too, about how and when. Suggests a specific time.
Yeah, ideally early morning, he says, the world's quiet then, passions are subdued, the mind feels stronger, rested.
Makes sense.
But he's not totally rigid. If morning doesn't work, maybe an hour at night. Or even finding moments during, repetitive work.
Like that Jacob Boehme example, the shoemaker.
Precisely. The point is, the time is there if the will is there. It requires shaking off that laziness, that indulgence. Spiritual awakening involves mental and physical alertness.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. He talks about meditating on yourself.
Ah, yes, that's absolutely key. The ultimate aim is to remove what he calls your errors, your flaws, your negativity to get to the truth.
How does that work? Meditating on yourself.
It's about honest examination, looking at your motives, your thoughts, your actions, holding them up against your highest ideal, trying to see yourself clearly without the usual biases. That practice builds inner stability.
And he suggests using this for specific problems. Like, if you're angry, meditate on gentleness.
Exactly. By deliberately immersing your thoughts in, say, love or forgiveness, you actively counteract and weaken the anger impulse.
So it's not just suppressing it.
No, it's transforming it. The text claims this doesn't just help overcome the negative, it actually reveals a deeper understanding of what he calls a divine law of love. Applying that understanding is how you change.
The outcome he describes sounds pretty fundamental, like a total shift.
It really is. It's about building this inner fortress against your, quote, only real enemy, the selfish, perishable self.
And connecting with the other self, the
Yep.
divine one.
Yes, the divine and imperishable self, the part aligned with truth. This brings, he says, profound inner strength, a clear grasp of core principles, and the ability to stay steady no matter what's swirling around you externally.
Leading eventually to direct knowledge of truth or God and that deep peace.
So the core function is opening yourself up to truth through this focused, disciplined practice. It's an active path, aspiring towards your highest potential meekness, purity, realizing truth as an inner reality.
Which flows right into the next big theme. This fundamental conflict he calls the war within.
Yeah, Allen paints this picture of the human heart as a battleground. Two forces fighting for control.
The self
Or the prince of this world, as he calls it.
versus truth.
Or Father God, yeah.
And they fight with totally different arsenals.
Completely. On the self side, you've got things like passion, pride, greed, vanity, stubborn self-will, all tools of darkness and confusion, really.
And truth's weapons.
Gentleness, patience, purity, sacrifice, humility, love the instruments of light.
And he's absolutely clear. No man can serve two masters.
Zero middle ground in his view. He even quotes Buddha. There is self and there is truth. Where self is, truth is not. Where truth is, self is not. You can't feed your selfish desires and expect to find truth. It's one or the other.
So what defines these two? How does he describe them?
Well, the self is seen as clever, deceptive, always driven by these subtle desires, constantly justifying itself.
Always got an angle.
Right. Truth, though, is simple, direct,
Mhm.
uncompromising. It won't bend.
And for someone actually seeking truth, what's the absolute must-do?
Sacrifice, total renunciation, denying the self daily. It's a really strong claim. Truth, in its fullness, he says, only appears when the very last bit of self is gone.
So they're like opposites.
Yeah.
Mutually exclusive.
Yes, exactly. Self is the rejection of truth. Truth is the rejection of self. Letting the self die is how you're reborn in truth. As long as you're clinging to self, truth stays hidden.
And he ties this directly, explicitly, to suffering.
Yeah, this is one of the toughest parts of the book, I think. He says, pretty radically, whilst you cling to self, your path will be beset with difficulties. Pain, sorrow, disappointment, that's your lot.
But the flip side.
There are no difficulties in truth, and coming to truth, you will be freed from all sorrow and disappointment.
Okay, so why does truth seem so hard to find then, if it's that simple?
Alan's answer is that truth isn't actually hidden. It's right there, transparent. We're the ones who are blind.
Blinded by aesthetists.
Exactly. Our vanity, our desires, our pride, our fixed opinions, they act like blinders. They distort everything. We just see our own self-made illusions, not reality, when we look through the eyes of self.
So what's the most vital quality needed for this path?
Humility. He really elevates this. It's the #1 characteristic of the person of truth. And not just acting humble.
What then?
Genuinely seeing your own opinions as having no special weight or value.
Wow. Okay, that's a big ask, giving up being right.
It really is. The person driven by self fiercely defends their opinions, right? Sees them as absolute truth. Leads to conflict.
But the humble truth lover.
Treats everyone with charity. Is willing to sacrifice their own views for love, for harmony. The text argues truth isn't something you win in a debate, it's something you live. He who has the most charity, Alan says, has the most truth.
And he applies this to organized religion, too.
Absolutely. When religions or creeds are wielded by the self-centered, they become tools for division, for error. People cling to their creed as the truth, condemning everyone else.
What's the alternative?
Alan says there's only one religion, the religion of truth, which is basically an unselfish, holy heart that's at peace with everyone, and only one error, the error of self.
Okay, realistically, how can someone figure out which master is actually in charge in their own life? It's often subtle, right?
It is. He suggests quiet, honest self-examination. Look at your thoughts. Do you cling to negativity or fight it? Look at your feelings, your actions. Are you stubborn, self-absorbed? Or gentle, willing to yield? Are you chasing wealth, power, status? Or are you okay with letting go, being overlooked? The answers, he says, show who you're really serving.
He even brings in the Bhagavad Gita to list signs of a truth lover.
Yeah, qualities like fearlessness, focus, generosity, self-control, being harmless, truthful, patient, calm, not fault-finding. It paints a picture of someone who's really gained mastery over their lower nature.
And achieving this inner victory, conquering the self, it changes how you see the world.
Completely. You see things in their right relations, free from the distortions of your own desires, biases, judgments. When there's no self to defend, no opinions to cling to, you find this deep, natural peace. You realize what he calls the profound simplicity of truth.
Let's circle back to that really stark statement. All suffering is of self.
It's absolutely central to his whole philosophy. Suffering isn't caused by events themselves. It's our self-centered reaction to them.
Can you break that down?
Sure. Disappointment. That comes because our self-will didn't get its way. Remorse comes from selfish actions we regret, feeling hurt by what someone says or does. That's the ego feeling wounded.
It all comes back to the self.
Every time, according to Alan. It's rooted in clinging to this fragile, temporary self. And the liberation, all suffering ends in truth. When you live from that place, sorrow just disappears.
That line, self is the only prison, that really nails it.
Doesn't it? Self is the only prison that can ever bind the soul. Truth is the only angel that can bid the gates unroll. So suffering isn't just pointless pain, it can be seen as a purifier, something that pushes us towards letting go of the self.
So the path isn't about fixing the world. It's about fixing your inner state.
Precisely. It's a call to cultivate your heart. Fill it with unselfish love, compassion. When negative thoughts pop up, shut them out. Practice actively returning kindness for unkindness, love for hatred, silence when attacked. This active practice, he claims, transforms selfish desires into genuine love. And as love grows, the self shrinks until it vanishes into truth.
Okay, moving on, Alan talks about acquiring spiritual power. What kind of power are we talking about here? Is it like supernatural?
Not really power over others or physical strength or anything like that. He means the power of self-control, the ability to direct your own thoughts, your own energies. It's an awakening to a higher way of operating.
So inner power.
Yes, true power, for Alan, comes from mastering your lower impulsive nature, not from indulging it.
And where does this power ultimately come from? What's the source?
Realizing and living by unchanging principles. Things like love, purity, compassion.
How does that create power?
Well, wellness is being constantly swayed by your feelings, your impulses, right? Power is grounding yourself, steadying yourself on a firm, unchanging principle.
Okay, and how does that play out when things get tough?
The person guided by principle, Alan says, stays calm, courageous, self-possessed, no matter what's happening. They'd rather give up comfort, possessions, even their life, than betray their principles.
Versus the self-centered person.
They change course instantly if their comfort or interests are threatened. They scheme, they protect themselves. Losing wealth or life is the worst possible outcome for them.
But for the person of principle.
The only real disaster is betraying the truths they stand on.
So the real test is when you're facing loss, when everything's on the line.
Exactly. The text says the moment of crisis shows your true foundation. It's easy to talk peace when life is smooth. But if your interests are threatened and you react with anger or conflict, well, that shows what you're really based on. He points to examples like Jesus enduring immense suffering without abandoning divine love.
How does someone actually get this kind of inner strength? It sounds pretty developed.
Through what he calls inward illumination, a deep understanding of these spiritual principles. And crucially, that understanding isn't passive. It demands constant practice and application.
What did that practice look like?
He suggests meditating diligently on a principle, let's say, divine love. Then you take its searching light and apply it to everything in your life, your habits, your actions, how you talk, what you think, what you desire, everything.
And what happens when you do that? That honest self-assessment guided by a principle.
Well, two things. The principle itself becomes much clearer. And second, your own shortcomings where you don't measure up to that ideal become really obvious.
That sounds potentially discouraging.
But it's not meant to be. That clarity gives you a target. It spurs you on. You work to bring every part of yourself into harmony with that principle, letting go of anything that's discordant. That state of inner harmony is spiritual power.
And you see it outwardly as like more patience, more calmness.
Exactly. Patience is called the hallmark of divine knowledge. Staying calm and composed, even when life is busy or chaotic, that's the sign of someone building this inner power.
Are there like first steps someone could take?
Yeah.
Practical things?
Yes. He says, break free from just following the crowd, from tradition or popular opinion if it doesn't feel right. Stand alone. Trust your own deepest conscience. Follow the light that is within you.
That sounds challenging.
Oh, it is. He acknowledges there will be falls, setbacks, but the key is faith. Keep going. Find a principle that resonates, that feels like a solid rock, and consciously choose to stand on it.
Because ultimately, selfishness is weakness, and unselfishness is strength.
That's the absolute core of it. Selfishness in any and every form is dissipation, weakness, death. It scatters you. Unselfishness in its spiritual aspect is conservation, power, life. As you ground yourself in these principles, you start to embody them. You become, in his words, beautiful, unchangeable, strong.
That leads perfectly into the next idea, the realization of selfless love. He used a great analogy here, the sculptor.
Yes. Michelangelo seeing the statue inside the rough stone. Alan says it's like that with us. There's a divine image, this spotless, selfless love already inside everyone. It's just waiting to be uncovered through faith and patience.
And this love, he describes it as the real part of us.
Yes, the truth within, our real, immortal, eternal essence. To realize this, love is to become one with truth, with God, with the infinite. That's the claim.
Okay, but how do we actually chip away the stone? How do we reveal it?
It takes serious effort. Persistence, diligence, patience, unwavering faith. He's clear there will be trials, apparent failures.
But those aren't failures.
No, they're lessons. experiences, stepping stones. He uses that powerful line, of our vices we can frame a ladder. You use your mistakes to climb higher.
So struggles become tools, in a way.
They become indicators. They show you exactly where your inner selfishness and flaws are hiding. They point to what needs to be removed from your heart. And as you succeed in letting go of those selfish elements, selfless love starts to shine through. Growing patience, fading lower desires. Those are the signs it's happening.
He makes a really important distinction, doesn't he, between this divine love and what we normally call love.
Crucial distinction. Human loves, he says, tend to cling to specific people or things. They're partial, limited, and they cause suffering when those objects are lost or changed.
Whereas divine love
Embraces the whole universe. It doesn't cling, it causes no suffering because it seeks nothing for itself. It just is. It radiates outwards.
But the book does acknowledge that human loves and the suffering they sometimes bring are actually necessary steps.
Yes, they serve a purpose. They're painful reminders of how temporary everything earthly is. They prompt us, ideally, to turn towards the eternal source of love. When relationships cause heartache, the soul that's truly seeking is drawn toward the sheltering love of the eternal.
So the beauty of divine love is revealed in a heart that's been kind of softened or purified by suffering.
Exactly. That heavenly state is realized inwardly once the layers of ignorance and self-centeredness are stripped away.
And this divine love isn't some abstract idea out there, but something that becomes real inside us.
Precisely. Alan says it's beyond the selfish self's grasp, but when the heart and mind are emptied of self, this selfless love becomes an inward and abiding reality. This is what he means by the love of Christ, not just a belief, but a transformative state that lifts you above temptation, makes you a new man full of patience, purity, kindness, inner sweetness.
And it's a state of knowing, not just feeling.
Yes, a profound understanding. This love knowledge, he claims, actually destroys evil and even the belief in evil. For the truly wise, knowledge and love are inseparable.
Okay, but if this love is so powerful, so available, why does the world seem so full of suffering?
Because, according to the text, people are chasing shadows instead of substance. They're caught up in fleeting pleasures, material things, selfish interests.
Instead of selfless love.
Right. They're trapped by their desires, their cravings, which inevitably lead to pain and anguish. They're shut out from the mansion of all-seeing love by their own choices, their own clinging.
So the way out is yielding up the self entirely.
Completely. Understanding what that surrender really means. The text says our suffering isn't inflicted on us. The chains of suffering are self-forged. You suffer from yourselves, none else compels. Freedom only comes when the soul sees how worthless its self-made prison actually is.
Ties back to cause and effect again.
Always. Suffering and peace follow thoughts and deeds. Meditating on this helps us consciously choose to sow only good seeds, thoughts, and actions rooted in love in our hearts.
Alan makes a point that trying to reform the world without this inner work is kind of pointless.
Yes, because the root problem, evil, selfishness, is in the human heart. Society won't change fundamentally unless individuals purify themselves. A golden age of peace requires people learning divine love. He challenges you, the listener. Let the rich cease to despise the poor, and the poor to condemn the rich. If people did that, the golden age would be here. Purifying your own heart is the biggest contribution.
He's saying you can enter that golden age now. Inwardly.
By rising above your selfish self, transforming prejudice, hatred, judgment into gentle, forgiving love. The text is adamant. Where condemnation exists, selfless love cannot.
Okay, that's a tough one. How is it possible to stop all condemnation? Especially when people do genuinely bad things.
The text suggests this comes from reaching a state of interior enlightenment. It's not ignoring harm, it's gaining a deeper perception, seeing the underlying causes behind someone's actions, understanding their own inner suffering, and seeing their eventual purification through the universal law.
So it replaces judgment with compassion.
Exactly. That deep understanding brings calmness and compassion, making judgment impossible. Judging others, he says, just shows you're still stuck in your own self. A heart filled with supreme love has no room left for condemnation.
Reaching that state takes serious work, though.
Unremitting self-discipline. Victory over self. Only the pure in heart see God. When the heart is purified, you experience a new birth. Love awakens. Peace is found. Overcoming that spirit of condemnation is the hardest part of the inner battle.
And he contrasts this with religious infighting. People condemning others over doctrines.
Calls it murdering divine love. Until you can view everyone different faiths, no faith, with total impartiality and inner calm, you haven't fully realized love.
And the result of realizing this love.
It dissolves condemnation. It lifts your consciousness to see love, goodness, justice as universal, supreme, indestructible forces behind everything.
He offers practical steps, too.
Train the mind. Impartial, gentle thought. Train the heart. Purity, compassion. Train the tongue. Silence, stainless speech. That's the path to holiness, peace, immortal love.
And living this way, how does it affect others?
The text claims you gain the power to convince without arguing, teach just by being, attract wisdom seekers without self-promotion, and subdue hearts through love, not force. Love is presented as all-conquering.
The final state sounds like deep inner rest.
Knowing love is universal, supreme, all-sufficient, being free from inner conflict, seeing others striving but remaining satisfied, sorrowless, serene yourself. That is peace, gladness, immortality, divinity.
Which brings us to entering into the infinite. This feels like the ultimate destination in the book.
Yes, Alan taps into that deep feeling most people have, that material life is limited, that there's a yearning for something boundless, eternal, the infinite.
And pain and sorrow kind of reinforce that, remind us that earthly pleasures don't ultimately satisfy.
Exactly. That inner revolt against the idea that this is all there is, that deep longing, proves that only the immortal, the eternal, the infinite brings true, lasting peace.
He calls this sense the common ground of faith.
It's the source of religion, of love. It's recognizing that fundamentally we are divine, internal, striving to realize our true nature. Our spirit is part of the infinite, satisfied with nothing less. Pain continues, Alan says, until we return home.
He uses that water drop analogy.
Beautiful, isn't it? The drop contains the ocean's essence but feels separate. Man contains the infinite's likeness but feels separate. The drop must return, lose its separateness. Man must return to the source, lose himself in the great ocean of the infinite.
So the goal is oneness, perfect harmony with eternal law.
The law of wisdom, love, peace. But, and this is crucial, this state is incomprehensible to the merely personal mind. Our sense of being a separate self, our personality, our selfishness, that's the exact opposite of divinity. It requires, he says, an unqualified surrender of the personality.
Which sounds terrifying from a worldly view, like losing yourself.
The world sees clinging to your you-ness, your ego, as vital. Giving it up seems like annihilation. But Alan calls this surrender the one supreme and incomparable blessing, the only real gain. Focusing only on the temporary self means living and dying in illusion.
He seems particularly critical of attachment to the physical body.
Yes, clinging to it, seeking constant gratification, believing in physical immortality, that's a distraction. It breeds fear of death, obscures spiritual truth. The text is blunt. The flesh must pass away. It's temporary.
So you don't immortalize the flesh.
You enter immortality by overcoming attachment to it, relinquishing its desires, realizing the God state of consciousness.
So overcoming senses, selfishness. That's the bridge from the personal illusion to the impersonal truth.
That's the pathway described. Practice self-denial, conquer animal impulses, refuse slavery to luxury, pleasure, practice ever higher virtue, grow into divinity, humility, meekness, forgiveness, compassion, universal love.
He connects goodwill and insight.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Says only someone with constant goodwill towards all can have true divine insight, can see reality clearly. The truly good person is the wise person, the knower of the eternal. He lists signs. Unbroken gentleness, patience, humility, grace, self-control, self-forgetfulness, sympathy, and warns against the impatient, angry, boastful, pleasure-obsessed.
So the path to the infinite, summed up.
Let a man abandon self. Let him overcome the world. Let him deny the personal. By this pathway only can he enter into the heart of the infinite. The world, the body, personality, their mirages, dreams from the perspective of eternal truth.
He mentions a one great law, love, where problems just dissolve.
Realizing this fundamental law, this underlying unity, is entering the infinite. Centering your life in this law brings rest, harmony, peace. Refraining from negativity, conflict, resistance, trusting in the holy calm within that lets you consciously experience the infinite principle, which mere intellect can't grasp.
Why do people struggle so much with life's big problems then?
The text suggests it's because they get worn out, stuck in the limits of their personality. They desperately try to save their personal life, their ego.
And lose the impersonal life in truth.
Exactly. Clinging to the perishable shuts out the eternal.
And by surrendering the self, difficulties just vanish.
It's a huge claim. All difficulties, errors, problems exist only in the self-created illusions of the ego. Self and error are basically the same thing. Error is complicated, truth is simple, love of self blocks truth. Seeking personal happiness means missing abiding bliss, he quotes Carlyle. Seek blessedness, not happiness. Love God, not pleasure.
So the person who gives up that self everyone else clings to.
Steps out of confusion into profound simplicity, looks foolish to the world maybe, but realizes the highest wisdom, rests in the infinite, accomplishes without striving because they align with unchanging principles, not personal agendas.
What kind of mindset does that surrender take?
Being equally okay with annihilation or life. Boundless trust in the great law, the supreme good, zero trust in the fragile self.
And the result of living like that.
No more regret, disappointment, remorse. Content with whatever happens, seeing yourself as a servant of the Supreme, unaffected by worldly ups and downs, radiating compassion and love, seeing struggles as a passing storm leading to wisdom.
What are the hallmarks of someone who's truly entered the infinite?
Sublime patience, infinite compassion, deep inner silence, complete purity. Their presence is a blessing, their words uplift. It's solving life's mystery through the ultimate sacrifice of self.
Okay, next section, the law of service. This is about living truth out in the world.
Yes. The book calls the spirit of love manifested as a perfect life, the absolute peak of being, the whole point of knowledge here on earth.
And he links truth and love directly.
Right.
The amount of truth you have is shown by how much love you express.
Right. Someone intolerant, judgmental, even if they seem religious, has little truth. The patient, calm, unbiased person has the fuller measure. The real test of wisdom isn't beliefs, it's how you live. Your spirit, especially under pressure.
He suggests truth itself is beyond words, can't be captured in language.
Described as ineffable. You can't pin it down in doctrines. It can only be experienced through practice and shown as a pure heart and a blameless life.
So who actually has truth amidst all the conflicting claims?
The one who lives it, practices it, has risen above inner conflict by conquering themselves. They're quiet, calm, centered, free from arguments, bias, condemnation. They just bestow unselfish love.
The ultimate proof isn't winning debates, but demonstrating virtue when tested.
Absolutely. Unshakable patience, calmness, meekness, gentleness, always. These are divine virtues belonging only to one who's given up self and lives in harmony with the law of love.
So the text gives us a clear call to action based on this.
Stop the useless arguments about truth. Instead, consciously think, say, and do things that promote harmony, peace, love, goodwill. Cultivate heart virtue. Search diligently for the truth that actually frees the soul.
Because the fundamental law underneath everything is love.
Yes. Realizing this law makes you feel immortal, invincible, connected to the unbreakable. The soul's whole journey, birth, suffering, death, is the effort to realize this law. When you do, suffering and personality dissolve.
And the highest expression of this impersonal law.
Service. For the purified heart, the final, holiest sacrifice is giving up the well-earned enjoyment of truth, that inner bliss to stay among people and serve mankind. This sublime humility of saviors is the seal of Godhead. Personality vanishes, becomes a channel for the impersonal spirit of love.
But Alan notes that self-centered people often misunderstand this.
They limit divinity to their savior, deny it in others, create conflict. Truth can't be owned by any person or group. When personality steps in, truth is lost.
So the real glory of saints and saviors is their deep self-sacrifice.
Profound humility, total unselfishness, giving up everything, including ego. Their work endures because it's free from self. They give without expecting return, work without seeking reward.
Like the farmer sowing seeds.
Exactly. So seeds of goodness, purity, love, peace, without demanding a personal harvest. Trust the great law to bring the results.
And he warns against seeing these figures as just distant miracles, impossible to emulate.
Yes, he says that belief paralyzes our own efforts. The text claims powerfully, what Jesus or Buddha became, they became through persistent self-sacrifice. And you, the listener, can do the same by following their path.
The simplicity of that path seems almost too simple for many.
That's what he suggests. The core message is just give up self, or come unto me, I will give you rest. Not complex theories, but the daily work of weaving inner purity, building a stainless life.
He outlines stages of growth towards holiness.
Starts with restraining passions. Virtue begins. Then attacking selfish thoughts, the saint's work. Finally, freedom from passion and impure thought, the holy man. The holy man is divinely wise, knows truth fully, rests in peace. Holiness is the badge of wisdom.
And anyone fighting selfishness with love is a saint.
Regardless of outward status or beliefs, yes.
And this path culminates in service.
Forgetting self in love for all, losing yourself working for the whole. Vain self-promoting work perishes. Only impersonal work lasts. Duties done without self-interest, with joyful sacrifice, that's true service.
The world key lesson, Alan says, is absolute unselfishness.
And notes, it's often too simple for a world lost in complexity. A pure heart ends religion, begins divinity. Seeking righteousness is the way of truth and peace, realizing your immortality, that no good effort is lost.
The divinity of figures like Krishna, Gautama, Jesus is the peak of this.
The crowning glory of self-abnegation, the end of the pilgrimage. The world's journey ends when every soul becomes like them.
Finally, we reach the realization of perfect peace. How does Alan paint this ultimate state?
He starts with that duality again, outer chaos versus deep eternal peace within us, like the ocean depths are silent beneath storms.
We have inner depths undisturbed by sin and sorrow.
Exactly. Reaching and living in the inner silence is peace. The universe, too. Discord on the surface, harmony at the heart. The soul reaches for that harmony. Reaching it is peace. Hatred divides, but love underlies all. Reaching that love is peace.
In this inner peace, silence, harmony, love, this is the kingdom of heaven.
Yes. Hard to reach because few will give up self, become like little children. The gate is narrow, barred by pride, passion, greed, lust.
So true peace isn't just feeling good or things going your way.
Definitely not. Peace based on external comfort, getting what you want, winning, it's temporary. Only the peace of heaven lasts, and only the selfless heart knows it. Holiness, reached through self-control, guided by wisdom, is undying peace. Fully realized when self vanishes in a stainless life.
He repeats that core action again. To conquer love of self, to still the inward strife.
To find true peace, you must conquer yourself. Bring every thought, impulse, desire under the authority of the divine power within, no other way. Prayer, ritual useless without self-conquest. Only he that overcometh gets the prize.
He gives a practical technique for starting this inner conquest.
Withdraw. From the senses, the intellect, the world's noise. Go into the inmost chamber of your heart. Deep silence, holy calm, blissful repose. Meditate there. The faultless eye of truth, your clear perception, opens within.
And that inmost chamber is our true self.
Your real, eternal, divine self. Abode of peace, temple of wisdom, dwelling of immortality. Identifying with it means being clothed and in your right mind.
And the responsibility for our state is entirely ours?
Sins, sorrows, fears, anxieties, they are yours. You cling to them or let them go. Unrest is chosen. Peace can be chosen. Teachers point the way. You must walk it. Freedom comes from your efforts to yield what binds you.
So if we don't feel peace, we're basically blocking it ourselves.
That's the argument. Shutting yourself out, preferring the evil spirits of your own negativity. He says powerfully, you are what you will to be, what you wish to be, what you prefer to be. You choose purification and peace or suffering.
So the invitation is pretty clear.
Step out of the fret and fever, the heat of self, into the inward resting place. Come out of the self-made storms of sin and anguish, into the haven.
The path to perfect peace is total internal surrender.
Give up self-seeking. Give up the self. Peace of God. Subdue the animal within. Conquer selfish uprisings. Transmute your nature into love, life of perfect peace.
And the final outcome he describes.
Crossing mortality's waters while alive, reaching the shore of peace where sorrow, sin, suffering, uncertainty can't touch you, standing there holy, compassionate, awake, glad you understand the meaning of sin, sorrow, suffering. They lead to wisdom. You grasp the cause and purpose of existence. You enter into rest. This is bliss, gladness, knowledge, wisdom, love. This is perfect peace.
Wow, that is quite a journey Alan lays out in the way of peace, from that deliberate meditation and self-examination.
Through the core battle between self and truth.
To building inner strength on principles, realizing selfless love, touching the infinite by letting go of the personal.
Understanding service through the path of saviors, and finally landing in perfect peace through conquering and surrendering the self.
It really is. And that consistent message, you hear it again and again. The path to peace, wisdom, the eternal, it's all internal. It takes conscious work, effort, what he calls sacrifice, especially sacrificing that limited, selfish self we naturally cling to.
Absolutely. And for you listening, Alan's work throws out some really powerful, maybe even uncomfortable ideas. That core assertion that all suffering stems from the self, that can hit hard.
Right. And the call for complete self-renunciation is the only way to freedom and peace. That's a massive challenge to how most of us operate. So as you reflect on this deep dive, what concepts maybe clicked for you, gave you an aha moment?
And which ones feel like they need more mulling over, maybe even some practical exploration in your own life?
We're so grateful you shared this text with us. It allowed for a really fascinating exploration together.
It certainly offers a potent, if demanding, way to think about our struggle and the potential for real, lasting peace.
Definitely. And maybe here's a final thought to leave you with, based directly on Alan's text. If he's right, if suffering truly is entirely self-inflicted, what would it actually mean to live a life where nothing anyone else says or does could truly wound you? What kind of ultimate freedom might that bring?
Keep exploring, keep questioning, keep diving deep.